Here is your latest African news. Africa-wide, African heads of state set for May 18 Paris Summit on COVID-19 and economic revival. A dozen African leaders, several European leaders, and a dozen heads of international organizations will be received by French President Emmanuel Macron for a summit on the revival of the African economy and the impact of the pandemic. Let us know if these types of summits hosted by foreigners on African issues have any impacts on the everyday African. Mozambique. White people rescued before black people in Palma. White contractors were prioritized for evacuation ahead of black locals during a rescue operation following an attack in March by an armed group known locally as Al-Shabaab on the Mozambican town of Palma, according to Amnesty International. In a report compiled by interviews with 11 black survivors, Amnesty charged that even dogs were pulled to safety before black people by a helicopter that airlifted civilians from a hotel where they sought refuge. Unfortunately, this might go to show the type of world that we Africans might still be living in. Ivory Coast. Teenage girl found in a boat drifting for 22 days at sea. A 17-year-old from Ivory Coast has shared her incredible story of being rescued after spending 3 weeks adrift at sea. Out of 59 passengers, Aicha is one of the only 3 to survive, recovering after 10 days in hospital. It's the biggest known tragedy involving migrant boats in the Canary Islands. Aicha left her hometown in November and traveled to Mauritania, where she got on the boat. This further shows the dangers immigrants still face trying to reach Europe. Please don't try it. It's not worth your life. Nigeria. Burna Boy, the first African artist with 100 million streams from 3 albums, chart data. Grammy Award-winning Nigerian singer has made history as the first African artist to achieve over 100 million streams on Spotify. Burna Boy's last 3 albums, African Giant, Outside, and Twice as Tall, had each hit 100 million on the said platform, according to local reports. This comes barely a day after Burna Boy's mother and manager, Bose Ogulu, was named as one of the 2021 International Power Players by Billboard. South Africa. South African-born entrepreneur pledges $200 million for African vaccine. As entrepreneur Mr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who hails from South Africa and into pharmaceutical entrepreneurship, has made it known that his family's foundation will donate a sum of $211 million to help in developing the production of vaccines in South Africa. He made it known through a meeting with the World Health Organization where the issue of fighting the spread of COVID-19 was discussed. He said his target for the donation is to transfer the know-how of the development of vaccines and build self-sufficiency and innovation. Tanzania. Rawak Dakik becomes the first Tanzanian woman to climb Mount Everest. Rawan Dakik on Wednesday became the first Tanzanian woman to climb Mount Everest, the world's highest peak. Though she's yet to make it to the summit, Rawan has completed her second rotation at 7,200 meters. She is now waiting for good weather to reach the summit, a feat she's likely to achieve on the 20th of May. Malawi. Malawi president proposes a switch from growing tobacco to cannabis. Malawi President Lazarus Chakwera was warned that his country's leading foreign exchange earner, tobacco, was in terminal decline and urged a switch to high-growth crops like cannabis, which was legalized locally for some uses last year. Tobacco was expected to earn less than $200 million in 2021, a figure roughly similar to the past 2 years, but well below previous annual earnings that used to top $350 million. Countries around the world are either legalizing or relaxing laws around cannabis, including several in Southern Africa, such as your your Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and Zambia. Africa. International aid to Africa needs an overhaul. Many African countries still rely heavily on foreign aid. However, several studies have shown that foreign aid has failed consistently to deliver sustainable economic growth and even poverty reduction. The fact that foreign aid, as currently practiced today, has failed to achieve its poverty reduction targets in Africa is actually clear from the data. Africa is the only continent in the world where official aid inflow outstrips private capital inflow by a large margin. This is quite problematic since no country in the world has achieved substantial development based just on a reliance on aid. Sudan. Sudan confirms $1.5 billion loan from France to clear IMF arrears. Sudan continues its quick step reintegration with international partners confirming $1.5 billion bridge loan from France to clear arrears with the IMF at a meeting of global investors on Monday in Paris. The announcement follows a bridge loan from the United States to clear $1.15 billion in arrears with the World Bank and a deal with the United Kingdom and European countries to clear $425 million backlog with the African Development Bank. Namibia. Germany close to accord with Namibia over the colonial genocide. Germany said on Monday it's close to an agreement with Namibia for the genocide of tens of thousands of indigenous people when it was the colonial ruler over a century ago. Historians say a German Gen, Lothar von Trotta, who was sent to what was then German Southwest Africa to put down an uprising by Heroras in 1904, instructed his troops to wipe out the entire tribe. The order also affected even smaller tribes. Rwanda. Rwanda's Kagame says relations are on the mend with France. France's acceptance in a report this year that it bore a responsibility for the 1994 genocide in Rwanda marked a big step forward in repairing relations between the two countries, Rwandan President Paul Kagame said on Monday. A commission established by President Emmanuel Macron concluded in March that France had been blinded by its colonial attitude to events leading up to the genocide and bore serious and even overwhelming responsibility. Unfortunately, the nearly 1,000-page report absolved France of complicity in the killings. Kenya group seeks rights to spiritual cannabis use. The Kenyan group has gone to court seeking to be allowed to consume cannabis for spiritual purposes. The Rastafari Society in Kenya, which identifies itself as a minority religious group, said its members live in fear because of laws that are hostile to their religious practices. Rastafarians are often subjected to prejudice, intimidation, and unwarranted searches in their homes and designated places of worship, the group added. Lawyers Shadrach Wambui argued that cannabis was a sacrament connecting believers to their creator. Nigeria. Nigeria's inflation falls for the first time in 21 months. Nigeria's inflation rate reduced by 0.05% in April compared to what they obtained in March, the National Bureau of Statistics said in a report on Monday. The Bureau said while the inflation rate stood at 18.17% in March, it reduced to 18.12% in April. It's the first fall in Nigeria's inflation rate in the last 21 months. The last time the inflation rate dropped in Nigeria was in August of 2019, when it fell from 11.08% to 11.02%. Ethiopia. NEBE postpones election day. The National Electoral Board of Ethiopia, NEBE, announced that the due date for the 6th general elections, which is scheduled to take place on June the 5th, 2021, has now been postponed. In a press conference they gave yesterday, the NEBE chairperson, Birtukan Mideksa, said the delays have been witnessed in opening of a new election offices, voters' registrations, and in other activities are contributing to the election day postponement. Birtukan noted that the board will announce the election day soon. Africa-wide, slavery and Dutch's dark past. There's a dark side to the years that brought huge prosperity to the Netherlands, with the trade in spices, sugar, coffee, tobacco, and other such goods. From the 16th to the 19th century, the Dutch bought and sold around 600,000 African men, women, and children for work at the plantations and mines and as household slaves. Recent years have seen an increase in awareness of this evil past. Slave trade by the Dutch West India Company contributed to the Netherlands' status as a global economic power, particularly in the early days. Should Africans get restitutions from the Dutch people today who now enjoy the fruits of their slavery past? Let's discuss this. Nigeria's stolen $5.8 million by State Governor Ibori sent back from the UK. Millions of dollars worth of Nigerian state funds that were stolen by a former governor between his term in 1999 and 2007 and laundered in the United Kingdom have been returned to Nigeria. Former Delta State Governor James Ibori was convicted of money laundering in the United Kingdom in 2012, and prosecutors said he stole around $165 million. The federal government has received $5.8 million of the embezzled funds. Nigeria's Justice Department said in a statement, the recovered money is to be invested in infrastructure projects such as the Lagos to Ibadan Expressway. Africa-wide, Paris Summit pledged to lift patents to allow Africa to produce vaccines. A promise to lift patents to allow Africa to produce its own vaccines was the key pledge at the end of the summit on financing African economies hosted in Paris on Tuesday, May the 18th. The intention was evident: help the continent on the health front, but without a firm financial commitment for its economies. President of the African Union, Felix Tshisekedi, noted that the challenge was to convince the African people and counter efforts that have sought to demonize vaccination. It's true that there is a reluctance for the vaccine among Africans due to the fact that vaccines are currently coming from elsewhere. This is why it's more necessary now than ever to aim for vaccine production directly in Africa. Namibia. Questions remain over the future of Namibian oil discovery. Recon Africa has said it struck a massive oil field in northern Namibia, but locals said they were not properly consulted about the drilling, and environmentalists continue to fear an oil boom could threaten the Okavango Delta. Although Namibian Energy Minister Thomas Alwindo was optimistic, hailing the company's announcement as a great period for the people of Namibia. The news of the oil discovery also raised fears of the ecological effects drilling could have in the water-scarce region and for over 200,000 people who currently live there. Uganda inks 5 billion shillings Malaba-Kampala Railway rehabilitation deal. Uganda has signed a 5 billion shillings deal with a Chinese firm that will see its 260-kilometer century-old meter gauge railway line between the Malaba and Kampala rehabilitated in under 12 months. This comes after a meeting between Kenyan officials who accompanied President Uhuru Kenyatta to Kampala to attend President Yoweri Museveni's inauguration for his 6th term last Wednesday. Malawi. Malawi to destroy 19,000 expired COVID vaccines. More than 16,000 doses of vaccines have reached their expiration date and will be destroyed in Malawi. After arriving in the southern African country 3 weeks ago, the health minister said on Wednesday. Of the 102,000 doses sent by the African Union, some 16,400 were not used and expired on Tuesday. Of the total 530,000 doses received in the country via the COVAX program, the Indian government and the AU, all of which are AstraZeneca vaccines, 46% have been used so far. Ethiopia. Ethiopia aims to plant 20 billion trees by 2020. Ethiopian Minister Abiy Ahmed is leading a campaign to plant 6 billion more trees across the country this year. It forms part of his Green Legacy project to promote ecotourism and combat the effects of climate change. The initiative highlights his focus on the environment ahead of the elections. Abiy encouraged Ethiopians to plant billions of trees. These media will now prove if they're truly friends of Ethiopia. This year, the Ethiopian government also plans to send 1 billion seedlings to neighboring countries. Africa-wide, latest COVID-19 statistics from African countries. As of May 19, confirmed cases of COVID-19 from 55 African countries reached 4,706,525. Reported deaths in Africa reached 126,889, while 4,219,340 people have recovered and 15,420,119 vaccinations have been administered. Kenya. 1998 bomb blast victims sue state over security failure. Victims of the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombing in Nairobi are now demanding compensation for the state due to possible security lapses that led to the terror attack. In a petition filed at the High Court through legal aid group Kituo cha Sheria, the victims want to be compensated on the ground that the attack was a result of negligence and failure by security agencies. They also want President Uhuru Kenyatta to form a commission of inquiry to establish what happened prior to the bombing. They believe the bombing happened despite the security agency intelligence. Zambia. Zambia opposition leader Hichilema cleared to run for president. Zambia's main opposition candidate Hakainde Hichilema was officially nominated for the presidential election scheduled for August in Lusaka. He spent 4 months in prison for treason after contesting this result. Zambia, which has enjoyed relative stability since its first multi-party election in 1991. Zambia currently has a very close relationship with China. If Mr. Hichilema wins, will he keep the status quo with China? Who knows? Let's watch and see what happens. Africa-wide, reject illicit African monies, multinationals, countries told. The federal government in Nigeria has tasked multinationals operating in Africa and foreign countries who have been conduit pipes for illicit financial flow from Africa to block the leakages. The Nigerian Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, made the call at the International Conference on Illicit Financial Flows, IFFS, and Asset Recovery that was held virtually. She said that the multinationals must develop processes to block illicit funds, even as the foreign countries who receive these funds must block the funds from entering their countries, as well as cooperate with the affected countries to repatriate the funds. Mozambique. Total claims it remains committed to Mozambique. The chairperson of the board of directors of the French oil and gas company Total, Patrick Pouyanné, on Monday confirmed that the company remains committed to investing in the Mozambique LNG, liquefied natural gas project. In the Rovuma Basin, off the coast of the northern Mozambican province of Cabo Delgado, Pouyanné gave this commitment to Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi. Africa-wide, invasive species cost Africa $3.5 trillion a year, a study shows. New research says invasive species of weeds, insects, and worms are costing Africa more than $3.5 trillion every single year. Researchers based in Ghana and Kenya have highlighted the catastrophic effects of species introduced by human activity. Nigeria, where losses are estimated at $1 trillion a year, is much the worst affected country. The majority of the costs are from weeding, but damage caused by insects is estimated at almost $40 billion. Morocco. Migrants push for Spain's Ceuta again after border security is tightened. Hundreds of migrants tried to force their way past tightened security into Ceuta on Wednesday, as Spain pressed on with the expulsion of thousands who had swum or climbed into its North African enclave over the past 2 days. Around 2/3 of roughly 8,000 migrants who made it to Ceuta, including unaccompanied children, have been expelled, Spanish authorities say, although many of those returned said that they would again try to reach Europe. As thousands gathered in the Moroccan border town of Fnidek, near the frontier with Ceuta, hundreds of them clashed after dark with Moroccan riot police throwing stones and setting on fire a motorbike and a rubbish bin. Zimbabwe. Zim Genius gets recognition. A Zimbabwean genius, Angela Kimirai, recently got international acclaim when she was selected from 10,000 university students worldwide as one of the top 25 finalists in the Aussie Genius Awards to implement a social impact idea. Although she could not, and unfortunately did not make it into the top 10, Angela acquitted herself very well, as her idea was titled Improved Access to Medication in Zimbabwe. Was widely acknowledged. The OGAs, sponsored by Chevrolet, offers 10 college students the grand opportunity of up to $10,000 along with the time and mentorship to turn their ideas into a reality. Tanzania. Diamond hits out at Forbes over rich list. Tanzanian musician Diamond Platinum's real name, Nasib Juma, has hit out at Forbes magazine's ranking of supposed richest African artists. Forbes Africa recently released its list of richest African musicians according to their net worth in 2021. The list is mostly dominated by Nigerian artists, with Kenyan Esther Akoth, alias Akothi, emerging 15th. Ugandan Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobby Wine, at 16th overall. Diamond is in position 17, closely followed by Ugandan Joseph Mayanja in 18th position. Diamond, however, appears to suggest Forbes didn't share accurate numbers. The Wa hitmaker did not, however, clarify his true worth. East Africa. Ethiopia and Sudan discuss railway project in Khartoum. Ethiopia and Sudan's joint technical team for the construction of standard gauge railway project discussion took place in Khartoum to evaluate the feasibility study of the project in the presence of railway officials of the two countries. Ethiopia announced that the Joint Technical Committee for the construction of the Ethiopia-Sudan railway project discussed the feasibility study of the particular project. Ethiopia and Sudan have historic people-to-people relations and strong economic and social ties, and railway transport would boost the strong and historic relation of the two countries. Central African Republic. Central African Republic arrests Frenchman with huge weapons cache. A Frenchman has been arrested in the Central African Republic after police say they had discovered a very large arsenal of weapons in his home. The man, who claimed to be a journalist, was detained in the capital of Bangui. Humanitarian sources said the man worked as a bodyguard for several organizations in the country. which are currently fighting a major armed rebellion seeking to overthrow the government. Kenya. First ship docks at new Lamu port. The first ships docked at Kenya's deepwater Lamu port on Thursday, as the country looks to open a new transport corridor linking its vast northern region and neighboring nations to the sea. Kenyan officials hope that the Indian Ocean port, the country's second deepest water facility, will attract cargo destined for neighboring landlocked nations, Ethiopia and South Sudan, and offer transshipment services where large vessels bring in cargo for onward distribution by smaller ships. Somalia. Somali leaders gather for key election talks. Somalia's Prime Minister has invited regional leaders to a fresh round of negotiations in the hope of resolving a protracted feud over elections that sparked violence in the capital. The Horn of Africa country is experiencing its worst political crisis in years, with fighting erupting in Mogadishu last week after the president extended his mandate by 2 years without going to elections. The President Sunday tasked his Prime Minister with reaching out to rivals and overseeing the negotiations, a key opposition demand. Chad. African Union urges civilians and soldiers to share power in Chad. While the African Union repeated its earlier calls for a civilian-led transition to elections after 18 months, it said the military officers that seized power, led by Debby's son Mahamat, could continue to oversee security matters. In a statement, the African Union's Peace and Security Council underscored the imperative of an inclusive and consensual transition by process in Chad run by civilians, with a clear separation of roles and functions between the transitional government and transitional military council. Nigeria's national air carrier to begin operation in 2022. Nigeria will begin the operation of a new national air carrier in the first quarter of 2022. The emergence of COVID-19 delayed the conclusion of plans as well as the takeoff of the project, which the federal government is still to this day committed to completion. The Aviation Ministry will submit a proposal to the Federal Executive Council in 2 weeks, as the national carrier was expected to take off initially this year, 2021. The national carrier is an economic necessity for the country of Nigeria, with the size of population, the vantage geographical location, and other natural factors that are influencing this. Uganda and Burundi. Uganda and Burundi to build a road to bypass Rwanda. Uganda and Burundi are finalizing their plans to build a new road to promote trade and commerce and circumvent a barrier presented by Rwanda's closure of Gatuna border in early 2019. The new infrastructure to pass through northern Tanzania will fork out from Uganda to Tanzania and link to Burundi's Kobero border crossing point. Uganda's trade with Rwanda and Burundi, which is more inland, has plummeted since Kigali closed the busier Gatuna border, initially citing construction of a one-stop customs point and later blaming arrests of Rwandan citizens in Uganda. Thank you so much for watching this video. Visit our YouTube channel, Tuna Cheki, to watch weekly news reports, and our website at tunacheki.tv for all the latest African updates. You can directly support this news series by becoming our YouTube member or even becoming a patron. And remember, Africa is watching. And please, feel free to leave your suggestions, news tips, or topics about Africa that you'd like us to explore.